The modern world runs on updates, alerts, and the quiet anxiety that something needs attention right now. But for most of human history, nothing updated very fast. Information moved at the speed of a walking man, and sometimes not even that. For centuries, entire libraries existed because a few tired people sat in cold rooms and copied the same words again and again by hand for decades. No headlines, no breakthroughs, just ink, parchment, and the understanding that tomorrow would look almost exactly like today. This is one of those lives. Not famous, not dramatic, just long, very long. You wake up one morning and realize you will spend the next 40 years copying books, and quietly, you do. If you enjoy drifting off to long, uneventful history like this, feel free to subscribe. And if you'd like, leave a comment with your city and the time you're listening. It's always quietly interesting to see where these stories end up. Chapter 1. The Room Where the Years Begin. Before anything else happens, before ink or parchment or responsibility, this is the moment where you settle in. Wherever you are, you shift slightly. The room is dim. The day has finished asking things of you. Outside this story, the world can wait. Inside it, time is about to slow down to a pace that would frustrate almost anyone with a deadline. You don't need to do anything except follow the words. They will not rush you. You wake up early, not dramatically early, just early enough that the light hasn't decided what kind of day it's going to be. The monastery is quiet in the way that only places full of sleeping men can be. No traffic, no conversation, just the soft creak of wood adjusting to the cold and the distant sound of someone coughing in a different wing of the building. You are a monk now. That part has already been decided. Whatever life you had before has been folded away neatly, like clothes you no longer wear. The monastery has rules, and one of them is that days begin when the bell says they do, not when your body feels ready. So you rise, because everyone rises, and because there is nothing else to do instead. The corridor floors are cold. They always are. No one ever fixes this, because cold floors are not considered a problem. They are just part of the arrangement. You walk with the same careful steps you will use for decades, learning exactly where the boards creak and which stones feel uneven under thin sandals. Morning prayers happen. They always do. The words are familiar enough that you don't really think about them anymore. Your mouth moves, your voice joins the others. The sound fills the space and then fades, leaving behind the kind of silence that feels earned. After that comes the work. The Scriptorium is not impressive. People later will imagine it as dramatic, candlelit, full of genius and inspiration. It is mostly just a room. Long tables, narrow windows, shelves with parchment stacked carefully because parchment is expensive and fragile and slightly temperamental. The light comes in at an angle that is never quite ideal, no matter where you sit. This is where you will spend most of your life. At first, it feels important. You are copying books, sacred texts, commentaries, sometimes classical works that survived mostly by accident. There is a sense that this matters, and it does technically, but the feeling fades faster than you'd expect. Your task is simple. You sit, you copy. You do not add, you do not improve. You reproduce the text exactly as it is, including the mistakes, because fixing them would require admitting that you know better than the manuscript, and that is not your role. The ink is made in the same way every time. Someone else handles that. You are vaguely aware of soot, gum, and water. You do not question it. The ink smells faintly sharp, and by the end of each day, it stains the edges of your fingers in a way that never fully goes away. The quill takes time to get right. Too sharp, and it tears the parchment. Too dull, and the letters become thick and uneven. You learn this through quiet trial and error, guided by older monks who correct you with a look rather than words. Words are saved for important things. This is not considered one of them. Hours pass, not in chunks you can feel, but in a slow drift marked only by the changing angle of light on the table. You copy letter by letter, word by word. There is no reward for speed. In fact, speed is discouraged. A slow hand makes fewer mistakes, and mistakes are irritating to fix. Sometimes your mind wanders. It always comes back. The text pulls it back. The repetition does something to your thoughts, flattening them, smoothing their edges. After a while, you stop thinking in complete ideas. Your awareness shrinks to the space between lines. Meals are simple. Bread, maybe cheese, occasionally something warm. You eat without ceremony. Talking is minimal. Everyone knows everyone else has nothing new to say. In the afternoon, you return to the same seat, the same page, the same careful attention. Your back begins to ache in a way that will become very familiar. You adjust slightly. The ache stays. This is not punishment. No one is trying to make your life unpleasant. This is just how things are done. The monastery needs books. The church needs copies. Knowledge needs hands willing to repeat the same action thousands of times. Years begin to blur. The manuscripts change. The work does not. You notice small things instead. How winter light is sharper and less forgiving. How summer makes the ink dry faster. How your handwriting slowly becomes more uniform, less expressive, until it looks like it could belong to anyone. New monks arrive. They sit where you once sat. They struggle with the quill. You correct them with a look. The cycle continues. You do not think about the future much. 40 years is not a number that feels real yet. It is just a vague sense that tomorrow will be similar, and that this similarity stretches forward farther than you care to imagine. Chapter 2. Learning how time feels when nothing changes. By now, the novelty has completely worn off. Not that it was ever particularly novel to begin with, but whatever quiet sense of purpose you once felt has settled into something flatter and more practical. You wake up, you pray, you eat, you copy, you sleep. The days are no longer distinct enough to remember individually. They stack instead, like pages bound together without a title. You have learned how time feels when it stretches without milestones. It does not feel long, it feels wide, like standing in a field with no clear edge, where walking in any direction gives the same view. Years pass without announcing themselves. You only notice them indirectly, through small administrative changes, a new abbot, a revised prayer schedule, a rule added quietly and followed without discussion. Your body has adjusted to the work in the way bodies do when given no alternative. Your hand cramps less often now. The muscles in your fingers are stronger than they look. Your back still aches, but you've learned exactly how much discomfort can be ignored and how much requires shifting your weight. This knowledge has no use outside this room, but here it is valuable. The Scriptorium smells the same every day. Ink, parchment, faint traces of smoke from lamps used during darker months. You could recognize it anywhere. If someone blindfolded you and brought you here, the smell alone would tell you exactly where you were and what you were expected to do. The texts continue. Some are religious, some are administrative. Occasionally, something more unusual appears, a classical author, a philosophical argument copied and recopied so many times that it has become less an idea and more a pattern of marks. You read these things without reading them. Meaning is secondary. Accuracy is everything. Mistakes happen. When they do, they're dealt with calmly. A small scraping of the parchment, a correction added in the margin. No one scolds you. Scolding would imply urgency.
This work has none. You sit next to the same monks every day. You know their habits intimately, without knowing much about them as people. One clears his throat before starting each line. Another pauses at the end of every sentence, as if checking with himself. These rhythms become part of your own sense of time, more reliable than bells. Conversation, when it happens, is subdued and practical. Someone mentions that parchment supplies are lower than expected. Someone else notes that the winter was harder on the roof than usual. No one speculates. Speculation does not change the work. Outside the monastery, the world continues. You know this because travelers sometimes arrive, bringing vague news. A king has died. A border has shifted. A famine somewhere far enough away to be theoretical. These facts enter your awareness briefly and then settle into the same mental category as the weather. Not irrelevant, but not actionable. You return to your desk. There is a particular kind of concentration that develops here, not sharp focus, but something softer. Your eyes follow the lines. Your hand responds. Your mind drifts just far enough to make the hours pass without friction. You are present, but only barely. At some point, you realize you have been copying the same style of script for so long that you no longer remember learning it. The letters emerge fully formed. Your hand does not hesitate. Even errors appear familiar, like old acquaintances you recognize too late. Meals continue to be predictable. Bread remains bread. Cheese remains cheese. Occasionally, there is fish. The excitement level remains low. You eat because it is time to eat, not because you are particularly hungry. Sleep comes easily. The body knows it will be needed again tomorrow. Dreams, when they happen, are muted. Sometimes you dream of pages that never end. Sometimes of words rearranging themselves. You wake without interpreting them. You are not unhappy. This is important, though not particularly dramatic. Unhappiness requires comparison, and there is very little to compare this life to anymore. It simply is. New manuscripts arrive with instructions attached. Copy this. Preserve that. Use the older exemplar. Avoid embellishment. You follow these instructions precisely, not because you are especially obedient, but because deviation would require deciding something, and deciding things is tiring. Your handwriting is now indistinguishable from that of the monks who trained you. This is considered success. Individual style is discouraged. The text matters. The person does not. Seasons mark themselves subtly. In winter, the room is colder. Your breath becomes visible at certain hours. Ink thickens slightly. In summer, flies appear and must be gently discouraged from landing on fresh lines. These are the only disruptions. You notice that your name appears less often in any context. Records list your role, not your identity. This does not bother you. Names are useful in places where people come and go. Here, everyone stays. Occasionally, a manuscript you copied years ago returns, damaged or faded, and you are asked to copy it again. There is a strange familiarity in seeing your own earlier work. The letters look slightly less steady, margins less consistent. You correct nothing. That version belonged to a different set of hands, even if they were technically yours. You are now part of the machinery of preservation, not its center, just one quiet, replaceable component. If you were gone, someone else would sit here. The work would continue. Chapter 3. When routine stops feeling like repetition. Something shifts quietly, somewhere in the middle years, not in a way that announces itself. There is no moment where you realize things are different. It's more that one day you notice the absence of certain thoughts. The questions that once drifted through your mind during long hours have stopped appearing, not because they were answered, but because they no longer seem necessary. Routine is no longer something you endure. It is simply the shape of your days. You wake up before the bell now, not because you are eager, but because your body has learned the schedule more deeply than conscious thought. The bell rings anyway. It confirms what you already knew. You rise with the others, moving through corridors that feel less like a building and more like an extension of your own habits. The prayers pass. They always do. You know exactly which words will follow which, and your voice settles into the same volume it has carried for years. You are not thinking about meaning. Meaning is not required for repetition to function. In the Scriptorium, your seat has become unofficially yours. No one assigned it, it just happened. Newer monks choose other places without discussing it. The light is consistent. The table has a small notch on the edge where your fingers rest. This notch has no purpose, but you would miss it if it were gone. You begin work without ceremony. The page is blank. It will not be blank for long. Your hand moves with an efficiency that would have impressed you once. Now it is just normal. Letters form without conscious planning. You no longer sub-vocalize each word. Your eyes move slightly ahead of your hand, setting a quiet pace. There are days when you copy texts you have copied before. Entire passages are familiar. You could almost write them from memory, but you don't. Memory is unreliable. The exemplar is always there, quietly insisting on accuracy. Mistakes happen. When they do, they are dealt with calmly. A small scraping of the parchment, a correction added in the margin. No one scolds you. Scolding would imply urgency. This work has none.
Your sense of time has changed again. Hours no longer feel like hours. They feel like sections of a task. You know how long a page takes. You know how many pages fit into a day without strain. You rarely check the light. Your body keeps track for you. Other monks come and go. Some leave the Scriptorium for other duties. Some age out of the work. A few die. This is acknowledged briefly and then absorbed into the ongoing schedule. Their desks are cleaned. Their tools are redistributed. Someone else sits down. You do not reflect much on this. Reflection would slow things down. Meals remain quiet. The food is familiar enough that you notice changes immediately. A thinner soup, bread that feels slightly heavier. These are signs of something outside the monastery shifting, but they arrive softened by distance. Whatever the cause, tomorrow's meal will still happen. Occasionally, you are asked to train a new copyist. This involves very little speaking. You demonstrate, you correct posture, you point out spacing, you show how to hold the quill so the angle remains consistent across lines. They nod, they try. Their early work looks exactly like yours once did. Watching this does not make you nostalgic. Nostalgia requires contrast. This is simply a continuation. You realize at some point that you no longer think of this as work. Work implies an end. This has none. It is closer to maintenance, like keeping a fire going, not for warmth, but because letting it go out would require starting over. Your handwriting has reached a point of near anonymity. If someone placed your pages among others, no one would identify them as yours. This is the highest compliment available here. Individual flair would stand out, and standing out would be inconvenient. Winter comes again. It always does. The cold settles into the room. Your fingers stiffen slightly in the mornings, but loosen as the hours pass. You have learned to warm the ink just enough. These small adjustments feel satisfying in a way that is difficult to explain. Sometimes in the late afternoon, when the light thins and shadows stretch across the table, your mind drifts more than usual, not toward memories, but toward nothing in particular, a kind of blank awareness where the hand continues working without supervision. These moments pass unnoticed, unless something interrupts them. When the bell rings, you stop immediately. This stopping is as practiced as the writing itself. You do not linger. Linger implies reluctance. You stand, you leave the room. Evenings are uneventful. There is reading, sometimes the very texts you have copied. The experience is different now. You recognize the shape of arguments before reaching them. You know where a passage is heading by the rhythm alone. Sleep arrives without resistance. Dreams, if they come, are sparse. Often there are none you remember. The body rests because it must. At some point during these years, you stop counting how long you have been here. Not deliberately, it just stops being useful information. The calendar continues somewhere, but it no longer feels connected to you. You are not waiting for anything. Chapter 4. When the body joins the schedule. Age does not arrive all at once. It filters in quietly through small negotiations you begin making with yourself. You sit a little longer before standing. You adjust your grip more often. None of this feels alarming. It feels practical. Your mornings are the same, but slower by a margin that only you notice. You still wake before the bell. The difference is that you remain lying down for a moment, assessing how the day feels before agreeing to it. The bell rings, you rise, the assessment ends. The corridors are unchanged. The stones have not softened with time, but your awareness of them has sharpened. You know exactly where to place your weight. This knowledge keeps you upright. It will continue to do so for years. In the Scriptorium, your seat is still yours. It has outlasted several abbots. No one questions this. Stability is valued here, especially when it does not need explanation. You sit, you arrange your tools. Everything is placed in the same order it has been for longer than you can remember. Your hands feel different now. Not weaker exactly, just more deliberate. Each movement has a slight pause before it happens, as if your body is checking whether it's still interested. The answer is usually yes. Writing takes marginally longer, not enough to change expectations, just enough that you notice the passing of time again. Pages still get finished, the work still moves forward. It simply does so with more awareness. Your eyesight has shifted. The lines blur slightly if the light is wrong. You compensate by leaning closer. Others adjust the shutters without comment when they notice. This is not kindness, it is efficiency. You produce better work when you can see it. Mistakes remain rare, but fatigue makes them more likely late in the day. When one happens, you feel a faint irritation, not at yourself, but at the interruption. Corrections take time. Time has become something you measure again, even if you do not resent it. Newer monks look very young. This is not a judgment, it is an observation. Their movements are quicker, their posture less careful. You watch them without comparison. Comparison would require wanting something different. You were given fewer new texts to copy and more to review. This is framed as trust, which is accurate enough. You examine pages for consistency. You check spacing. You look for errors that would have escaped a less practiced eye. This work is quieter, but more mentally tiring. Your days still pass in the same shape: prayer, work, food, work, evening, sleep. The order has not changed, but your relationship to it has. Each segment feels slightly heavier, as if the day has gained weight without gaining complexity. There are small accommodations now. A cushion added to your seat, a warmer cloak in winter. None of these are discussed. They appear and remain. The monastery is good at making adjustments that do not draw attention to themselves. Illness passes through occasionally, a cough here, a fever there. You recover more slowly than you once did. This is noted by no one but you. The schedule absorbs it. You return when you can. Someone else covers the work until then.
You find that you think more about the physicality of the books themselves, the thickness of parchment, the smell of older volumes, the way bindings loosen over time. These details occupy your attention when your mind tires of text. Sometimes you are asked questions, not about doctrine or meaning, but about process, how long a manuscript might take, whether a certain ink will hold, which exemplar is most reliable. You answer without embellishment. Your authority comes from duration, not enthusiasm. The seasons continue their quiet cycle. Winter stiffens your joints. Summer brings longer light but more fatigue. Spring and autumn pass without ceremony. You register them mostly by the way the room feels. You are aware now of how long you have been here, not as a number, but as a depth. Layers of memory compressed into habits. You could navigate the building in complete darkness. You almost do sometimes during early hours. There is no sense of nearing an end, not yet. Just a recognition that things are finite in the abstract way everyone knows but rarely considers. This knowledge does not change your behavior. You continue. You copy. You correct. You review. The bell rings. Chapter 5. Becoming part of the furniture. There is a point where people stop asking how long you've been here, not because they know the answer, but because the question stops making sense. You are simply here. You occupy your place as reliably as the table and the shelves and the narrow windows that let in the same careful light every day. New monks assume you have always been there. Older ones know better, but don't bother correcting the impression. Duration has blurred into presence. Your mornings are slower now, but more precise. You conserve movement without thinking about it. Every step is chosen, not cautiously, efficiently. You no longer waste energy on gestures that do not move you forward. The bell still rings, you still rise. The difference is that the sound feels less like a signal and more like confirmation. It tells you what you already knew was happening next. In the Scriptorium, your tools are left untouched when you are not there. This is not official policy, it is habit. Someone once moved your quill years ago and then quietly put it back the next day. Since then, no one tries. Your hands shake slightly when they are cold. You warm them before beginning. Once you start writing, the motion steadies them. The script remains clean, slower, but consistent. Consistency matters more. You work shorter hours now, not fewer days, just fewer pages per day. This is accepted without comment. The output of the monastery remains steady because the system absorbs individual changes. It always has. You are consulted more often, not formally. Someone will stand beside your desk and wait until you finish a line. They ask whether a passage looks correct, whether spacing feels right, whether a correction should be made or left as a faithful copy of an error. You answer quietly. Your answers are followed. There is no sense of authority attached to this, just trust built over repetition. Your mind wanders less now, not because of discipline, but because there is less internal noise. Thoughts come and go without catching. The present moment is sufficient. The page in front of you contains exactly as much as you need to engage with. Meals pass more quickly. You eat less. Hunger is muted. Taste has flattened slightly, but not unpleasantly. Food is fuel. The body understands this. You notice that conversations around you have changed. Names of people you once knew appear less often. New names replace them. You do not confuse them. You do not dwell on the change. The texts you handle now are often restorations. Old volumes repaired, recopied, stabilized. You recognize handwriting styles from decades earlier. Sometimes you recognize your own. This no longer feels strange. It feels symmetrical. Your vision requires more light. The shutters are adjusted more frequently. Someone brings a lamp earlier in the day during darker months. You nod. That is all that is needed. There are days when you do not go to the Scriptorium at all. A stiffness that does not ease. A fatigue that suggests rest is more productive than persistence. These days are accepted. You read instead, or you sit quietly and listen to the building breathe. You have become deeply familiar with stillness, not as an absence of activity, but as a background condition. Movement happens within it briefly and then returns. You are aware now that your role is less about producing new pages and more about ensuring continuity, teaching by example, maintaining standards, being a reference point that does not need to be consulted unless something feels off. This suits you. You are not eager for completion. There is no final manuscript you are aiming toward. The work exists to be done, not to be finished. When the bell rings, you stop. Sometimes your hand lingers for a fraction of a second longer than it used to. This is not reluctance. It is simply taking note. Evenings are quiet. They always have been. The difference now is that silence feels familiar enough to be companionable. Sleep is deeper, longer. Dreams are rare. Chapter 6. When less gets done and nothing is lost. The change is subtle enough that no one marks it. If someone were keeping careful records, they might notice that fewer pages leave your desk each week. But records here focus on totals, not sources. The books continue to appear. That is what matters. You arrive at the Scriptorium later in the morning now. Not much later, just enough that the light has settled into a more forgiving angle by the time you sit. Your body appreciates this adjustment, even if no one discusses it. When you do write, the work is deliberate. Each line receives full attention. You pause between paragraphs more often, letting your eyes rest. The rhythm is slower, but the accuracy remains unchanged. In some ways, it has improved. There is no rushing left in you. Much of your time is spent watching others work. This is not idle. You notice spacing issues before they become habits. You see when a hand is too tense or a quill is being cut poorly. You intervene early with a gesture or a brief word. Corrections are easier before they fossilize.
The younger monks respond well, not because you are intimidating, but because your presence implies that there is a correct way to do this, and that it has already been figured out. They do not need to experiment. That work has been done for them. You are sometimes asked to tell how things were done before, not in a nostalgic sense, just practical questions. Was this margin wider in older copies? Did this abbreviation appear before? You answer from memory without effort. These details have settled into you. Your hands tire more quickly now. When they do, you stop. This was once unthinkable. Now it is sensible. Stopping preserves the quality of what remains. Everyone understands this. You spend more time handling completed books, inspecting bindings, ensuring pages are aligned. These tasks are quieter and less physically demanding, but they require the same patience you have always had. You have it in abundance. The monastery feels smaller, though it has not changed. This is not because of confinement. It is familiarity. There are no surprises left in its layout or routines. You know when the sun will reach each window. You know which doors stick in winter. None of this requires thought. Meals are shorter. You excuse yourself early sometimes. No one minds. Silence is not considered rude here. It is the default. There are moments when you realize you have stopped thinking of yourself as someone who copies books. You think of yourself as someone who ensures that copying continues. This is a quieter identity, but a more durable one. Your name appears less often in daily interactions. People address you, but rarely refer to you. This does not feel like erasure. It feels like efficiency. Labels are unnecessary when roles are stable. You sleep more during the day. Brief rests, not naps exactly, just sitting with eyes closed while the building carries on around you. These pauses restore you more than sleep at night ever did. When you do write now, there is a clarity to it. Each letter is intentional. The script is unremarkable in the best possible way. It does not draw attention. It serves the text. You are occasionally thanked, quietly, indirectly. Someone mentions that the standard has held, that the books are reliable. These are compliments, though no one calls them that. The idea of 40 years is no longer abstract. You can feel it in your hands, in your posture, in the way you choose your movements. This awareness does not bring urgency. It brings selectivity. You no longer measure days by what you complete, but by what remains stable. Did the work continue? Did errors stay rare? Did the room function as it should? You still handle books, though carefully now. The weight of larger volumes is negotiated slowly. Someone often steps in to help without being asked. You accept this without comment. Refusing would create unnecessary friction. Your memory has become your primary contribution. You remember how texts used to appear, which versions proved reliable, where a subtle error once crept in and how it was resolved.
These details surface when needed, unforced. Sometimes someone brings you a manuscript and asks if something feels wrong. You look at it for a long time before answering, not because you are uncertain, but because you are letting recognition happen at its own pace. Eventually, you point to a line, or you shake your head. Either answer is accepted. Your days are shorter. You leave the scriptorium earlier, not abruptly, just when your attention begins to thin. You've learned to respect that boundary. Past it, nothing improves. Meals are quiet, even by monastery standards. You eat slowly. You stop when you are full. No one comments. These habits are mirrored unconsciously by those around you. You spend more time in places you once passed through without noticing. The cloister, the small courtyard, benches warmed by the sun for a short part of the day. You sit and observe light moving across stone. This feels productive in a way writing no longer does. The seasons still registered, but gently. Winter no longer feels like something to endure. It is simply a period when movement becomes more deliberate. Summer is warm and slightly tiring. Spring and autumn blur together. You are aware that you are being remembered even as you are still present. People refer to how you do things even when you are in the room. This is not uncomfortable. It is efficient. The pattern is established. You sometimes hear your name spoken by someone who has never worked directly with you. It sounds slightly abstract, like the name of a process rather than a person. You do not correct this impression. Writing, when it happens, is careful and brief. Corrections in margins, clarifying notes. Occasionally, a short passage copied to preserve continuity. These moments are satisfying because they are chosen. You do not think about legacy. The concept feels unnecessary. The shelves are full. The work continues. That is enough evidence of impact. Rest occupies more of your day. Not sleep exactly, just sitting without effort, letting thoughts pass without following them. This is easier than it once was. When you leave the scriptorium now, you look back less often, not because you care less, but because it no longer needs checking. The room holds itself. Chapter 10. When the room no longer needs you to move. There are days now when you do not enter the scriptorium at all, not because you are unwell, just because there is no particular reason to go. This realization arrives without drama. You notice it, accept it, and continue with the day as it presents itself. When you do visit, it is brief. You stand for a moment. You look around. Everything appears in order. Hands move steadily. Pages turn. The sound of writing fills the space evenly. You nod, mostly to yourself, and leave. Your chair remains. No one removes it. No one uses it unless necessary. It exists as a possibility rather than a requirement. Your days are shaped by rest now. You wake when you wake. You attend prayers when you feel able. The structure is still there, but it bends around you rather than insisting. This is not indulgence, it is adaptation. You spend time in the quieter parts of the monastery, rooms that serve no clear purpose beyond being available. You sit near windows. You watch weather arrive and leave. These observations are not framed as reflection. They are simply what happens. People still seek you out, but less often. When they do, it is usually to confirm something they already believe. You provide reassurance, or you suggest a small correction. Then the matter resolves itself. Your body is thinner now. Movement requires intention. You choose when to stand carefully. You do not rush. There is nothing to rush toward. Memory continues its slow work. You recall conversations from decades ago without effort. Names, small decisions, where a shelf was moved once. These details float up and drift away again. You notice that you are spoken of in the past tense occasionally, even while you are present. This is corrected softly, if at all. It does not bother you. Tense is a flexible thing. Writing, when it happens, is careful and brief. Corrections in margins, clarifying notes. Occasionally, a short passage copied to preserve continuity. These moments are satisfying because they are chosen. You do not think about legacy. The concept feels unnecessary. The shelves are full. The work continues. That is enough evidence of impact. Rest occupies more of your day. Not sleep exactly, just sitting without effort, letting thoughts pass without following them. This is easier than it once was. When you leave the Scriptorium now, you look back less often, not because you care less, but because it no longer needs checking. The room holds itself.
The thought of leaving the Scriptorium, of ceasing entirely, drifts through occasionally. Not urgent, not alarming, just a theoretical absence. It is noticed and accepted. The room, the work, the rhythm, all of it continues without interruption. Meals are smaller, lighter. You eat only what is necessary. The flavors are subtle. You notice them, but do not linger on them. Hunger is routine now, not drama. Your identity has become entwined with the room itself. People refer to how things are done and rarely remember to mention you. That is expected. That is proper. Your influence is felt even when unspoken. And while the world beyond the monastery shifts, changes, and decays, the Scriptorium remains steady. The shelves bear weight, the ink continues to mark parchment, the rhythm endures. Your presence, though diminished in action, anchors this continuity. Chapter 12. The Final Decades, Quietly Observed. The decades stretch outward now, like the unmarked pages of a manuscript you will never finish. You move less, speak less, act less. The work of copying, reviewing, and correcting has largely been assumed by others, and that is acceptable. Your role has shifted from producer to witness, from active participant to quiet guarantor of continuity. You wake when the body allows, sometimes before the bell, sometimes after. The schedule remains, but it no longer demands obedience. You follow when convenient. You pause when needed. The Scriptorium has learned to carry itself, and your presence is now optional. When you do enter, the room feels the same, though you notice things differently. Shadows cast longer than memory recalls. Dust gathers in corners where light scarcely reaches. Pages already copied by younger monks fill shelves you once populated with your own hand. You run your fingers lightly along bindings. You remember the labor without needing to reproduce it. Your hands are slower. They tremble slightly when empty, still when grasping a quill. You use it rarely. When you do, each stroke is deliberate, ceremonial. Corrections, marginal notes, the occasional line copied to maintain continuity. No more, no less. You sit longer now, often near the windows or by the doorway, watching, listening, observing the rhythm that you helped establish. The younger monks follow it unconsciously, unaware of the decades it took to form. Your presence reassures without requiring action. You are a fixture, a slow pulse behind the faster motion of work. Meals are smaller, simpler. Hunger is optional. Bread, cheese, water, occasional soup. You eat because the body reminds you, not because desire stirs. Flavors are noticed, acknowledged, then forgotten. Eating has become a functional ritual, like copying itself. Sleep comes frequently and deeply. Waking is gentle, without urgency. Time is less a measurement of hours than of sequences, the bell, the prayer, the light shifting across the room. Days, weeks, and years blur. Only the rhythm persists. The younger monks continue to consult you occasionally, rarely,
Not for expertise, though you have it, but for reassurance. A glance, a subtle nod, a faint correction. That is enough. You provide it with minimal effort because efficiency and stability matter more than activity. You think little of your own mortality. It is present in the abstract, but not pressing. The Scriptorium does not pause for your absence. It continues, and this is the point. Continuity does not depend on any one person, even one who has dedicated 40 years to the work. Sometimes, in rare moments of quiet, you remember the early years, how the first pages felt uncertain under your hand, how each line required attention and care, how the monotony, once tiring, became a companion. These memories are neither pleasant nor unpleasant. They simply exist, like the shelves, the walls, the light. The manuscripts themselves are the final witnesses. Parchment, ink, bindings, margins, everything you labored over now stands independently. They do not remember you personally, but they preserve the work, the rhythm, the discipline. Your contribution is embedded invisibly in the steadiness of letter forms and the alignment of pages. You no longer count the years. 40 has long since passed in experience, though not in the mind's capacity for measurement. Time has become a continuous presence, felt more as texture than as quantity. The bell rings. You may rise. You may remain seated. Either action is correct. Either is accepted. You breathe. The Scriptorium moves around you. Pages turn. Hands write. Ink dries. Shelves grow heavier. The rhythm persists.
Meals are minimal. Bread, a thin soup, water. You eat slowly, deliberately, without thought. Hunger has faded into routine. Taste is incidental. Fuel, nothing more. The body is a vessel, no longer the engine of labor. Sleep comes easily, often during the day. Your eyes close without effort. When they open, the room has shifted slightly. The light, the shadows, the positions of hands and manuscripts, but the rhythm remains intact. Nothing has broken. Nothing will. You notice your own absence in hypothetical terms. What would happen if you were gone? The answer is nothing remarkable. The Scriptorium continues. The younger monks follow the practices and patterns established long ago. Continuity no longer depends on you. That is neither sad nor triumphant. It is simply true. You are rarely consulted. Sometimes a question drifts towards you. You respond with a nod, a faint gesture, or a word. These moments are brief. They are enough. The room does not wait for your answer, but it respects it. The manuscripts rest, dry and stable, in neat rows on the shelves. The pages you copied decades ago exist side by side with those copied by others, indistinguishable in accuracy and steadiness. Your work has merged seamlessly into the collective effort. Authorship has dissolved into function. This feels right. The bell rings. You may rise, you may remain seated. Either is correct, either is accepted. You breathe, you exist. The Scriptorium functions. The manuscripts endure. The rhythm continues. And while nothing waits to be finished, everything is preserved. You are no longer required. You are merely here. That is enough. You remain. The monastery continues. The work goes on. Chapter 15. 40 years folded into silence. 40 years have passed, though it no longer matters to count them. Time has become a gentle undulation rather than a sequence. You sit, present and unobtrusive, and the Scriptorium moves around you. The rhythm is familiar. The work continues. The manuscripts endure. All that remains is continuity. You no longer rise unless necessary. Your hands rest in your lap, folded, still.
The quill lies untouched, but it does not matter. The younger monks write. Pages are filled. Lines are straight. Margins are even. The work proceeds independently, yet carries the imprint of your years, subtle, invisible, steady. Meals are brief, functional. Water, bread, thin soup. The body consumes what it requires. Flavors are peripheral. Eating is maintenance. Sleep fills the spaces between. You rest, you wake, without effort or urgency. Consciousness drifts alongside the scriptorium's hum. Your presence is quiet. Sometimes younger monks glance towards you, noticing a nod, a subtle correction, a brief instruction. These are rare and efficient. They are sufficient. They are enough. You no longer teach, you simply anchor. The manuscripts bear witness. Parchment, ink, bindings, margins. They exist beyond individual memory or effort. Your labor has been absorbed into a larger continuity. Authorship is irrelevant. Function endures. Stability persists. The scriptorium runs like clockwork. You notice the passing of seasons in light and shadow. Winter comes, summer follows. The weight of years is in your body, not your mind. The calendar continues quietly, irrelevant to the work, irrelevant to you. 40 years folded into silence. Each line copied, each correction made, each page handled with care. All have become part of the monastery's structure. You are a quiet element, fully integrated. Presence outweighs action. Watching replaces doing. The bell rings. You may rise. You may remain seated. Either is correct. Either is accepted. You breathe. You exist. The scriptorium functions. The manuscripts endure. The rhythm continues. And while nothing waits to be finished, everything is preserved. You are no longer required. You are merely here. That is enough. You remain. The monastery continues. The work goes on. Chapter 16. The Stillness After All. Now the scriptorium no longer notices your movements at all. You are a presence in the room only because you remain there, seated, observing, breathing. The younger monks work as they always have, guided by patterns that were set long ago. The manuscripts continue to accumulate. Ink dries, pages turn, shelves grow heavier. The rhythm endures. You move less than ever. When you do, it is deliberate, nearly imperceptible. The quill lies untouched. Corrections are rare, notes in the margin even rarer. The act of writing has become. Meals are minimal. Bread, a thin soup, water. You eat slowly, deliberately, without thought. Hunger has faded into routine. Taste is incidental, fuel, nothing more. The body is a vessel, no longer the engine of labor. Sleep comes easily, often during the day. Your eyes close without effort. When they open, the room has shifted slightly. The light, the shadows, the positions of hands and manuscripts, but the rhythm remains intact. Nothing has broken. Nothing will. You notice your own absence in hypothetical terms. What would happen if you were gone? The answer is nothing remarkable. The scriptorium continues. The younger monks follow the practices and patterns established long ago. Continuity no longer depends on you. That is neither sad nor triumphant. It is simply true. You are rarely consulted. Sometimes a question drifts towards you. You respond with a nod, a faint gesture, or a word. These moments are brief. They are enough. The room does not wait for your answer, but it respects it. The manuscripts rest, dry and stable, in neat rows on the shelves. The pages you copied decades ago exist side by side with those copied by others, indistinguishable in accuracy and steadiness. Your work has merged seamlessly into the collective effort. Authorship has dissolved into function. This feels right. The bell rings. You may rise, you may remain seated. Either is correct, either is accepted. You breathe, you exist. The scriptorium functions. The manuscripts endure. The rhythm continues. And while nothing waits to be finished, everything is preserved. You are no longer required. You are merely here. That is enough. You remain. The monastery continues. The work goes on. Chapter 15. 40 years folded into silence. 40 years have passed, though it no longer matters to count them. Time has become a gentle undulation rather than a sequence. You sit, present and unobtrusive, and the scriptorium moves around you. The rhythm is familiar. The work continues. The manuscripts endure. All that remains is continuity. You no longer rise unless necessary. Your hands rest in your lap, folded, still. The quill lies untouched, but it does not matter. The younger monks write. Pages are filled. Lines are straight. Margins are even. The work proceeds independently, yet carries the imprint of your years, subtle, invisible, steady. Meals are brief, functional. Water, bread, thin soup. The body consumes what it requires. Flavors are peripheral. Eating is maintenance. Sleep fills the spaces between. You rest, you wake, without effort or urgency. Consciousness drifts alongside the scriptorium's hum. Your presence is quiet. Sometimes younger monks glance towards you, noticing a nod, a subtle correction, a brief instruction. These are rare and efficient. They are sufficient. They are enough. You no longer teach, you simply anchor. The manuscripts bear witness. Parchment, ink, bindings, margins. They exist beyond individual memory or effort. Your labor has been absorbed into a larger continuity. Authorship is irrelevant. Function endures. Stability persists. The scriptorium runs like clockwork. You notice the passing of seasons in light and shadow. Winter comes, summer follows. The weight of years is in your body, not your mind. The calendar continues quietly, irrelevant to the work, irrelevant to you. 40 years folded into silence. Each line copied, each correction made, each page handled with care. All have become part of the monastery's structure. You are a quiet element, fully integrated. Presence outweighs action. Watching replaces doing. The bell rings. You may rise. You may remain seated. Either is correct. Either is accepted. You breathe. You exist. The scriptorium functions. The manuscripts endure. The rhythm continues. And while nothing waits to be finished, everything is preserved. You are no longer required. You are merely here. That is enough. You remain. The monastery continues. The work goes on. Chapter 16. The stillness after all. Now the scriptorium no longer notices your movements at all. You are a presence in the room only because you remain there, seated, observing, breathing. The younger monks work as they always have, guided by patterns that were set long ago. The manuscripts continue to accumulate. Ink dries, pages turn, shelves grow heavier. The rhythm endures. You move less than ever. When you do, it is deliberate, nearly imperceptible. The quill lies untouched. Corrections are rare, notes in the margin even rarer. The act of writing has become.
Now, action has largely ceased. You sit, your body still, observing without effort. The younger monks move through the scriptorium with the ease of those who have learned the rhythm you helped set. Quills scratch, pages turn, shelves settle under the weight of accumulated manuscripts. You do not interfere, you do not guide, you simply exist. Your role is no longer measured by output. not by lines copied, not by corrections made, not by notes in margins. Your presence alone has become the contribution. It reassures the room. It stabilizes the rhythm. It signals continuity without requiring acknowledgement. Meals are taken rarely and minimally. Bread, water, thin soup, sometimes skipped. The body is maintained without indulgence. Sleep fills the gaps between light and shadow. Rest comes easily, unhurried, undisturbed. Consciousness drifts alongside the scriptorium's hum. You notice the passing of light. Shadows stretch across tables and floors in predictable ways. The sound of hands moving across parchment is steady. Ink dries. Books settle. The weight of the years is gentle, present in the body, perceptible in rhythm. Occasionally, someone glances at you. A young monk pauses, sees you, nods, and continues. Your authority is implicit. It is quiet. It requires no reinforcement. The scriptorium functions independently, yet your presence subtly affirms it. Memory has become central. You remember decades of labor, the patterns of letters, the habits of ink, the subtle movements that ensure accuracy. These recollections do not intrude. They float quietly, a soft background to the ongoing work. The manuscripts themselves are enduring witnesses. Parchment, ink, margin, line, all persist beyond your physical presence. They carry the imprint of 40 years of labor without fanfare. They outlast urgency, effort, and even intention. The bell rings. You may rise. You may remain. Either choice is valid. Either is accepted. Continuity does not demand participation. It only requires awareness, and your awareness remains intact. 40 years of repetition, observation, and quiet endurance have produced stability, not dramatic, not heralded, but absolute. The scriptorium breathes with the rhythm you helped establish. You are part of that breath. Chapter 18. Merging into the rhythm. Time has become almost imperceptible. You no longer mark it with action. Your presence is a still point around which the monastery moves. Hands turn pages, quills scratch, ink dries, shelves bear weight. The scriptorium functions without your intervention, yet it carries the imprint of decades shaped by your labor and attention. You sit for hours, sometimes in a chair, sometimes by a window. Occasionally you rise, but only as necessary. Movement is deliberate, minimal. Sleep comes easily, filling gaps without urgency. Meals are simple, functional. Bread, water, a thin broth. Eating is an acknowledgement of sustenance rather than a ritual. The younger monks rarely seek you now. When they do, it is for reassurance, a nod, a faint gesture, a subtle correction. Their work continues regardless. Authority has dissolved into familiarity. Your contribution is now embedded in the rhythm itself. You notice the patterns of light across the scriptorium. Shadows stretch, recede, shift with subtlety you have learned to register without thought. Sound fills the space, scratching quills, the rustle of parchment, the soft movement of bodies and books. This becomes your meditation. Your presence is the quiet counterpoint to the activity around you. Memory has become your primary companion. You recall the early years, the uncertainty of the first pages, the labor of learning to steady your hand, the rhythm that eventually became second nature. These recollections are neither nostalgic nor pressing. They are simply a quiet background, absorbed into the room itself.